Okay, what is backup? Okay, let me tell you. Firstly, there are three types of backup. Usually, you would be doing a full backup, a transaction log backup, and a differential backup. Okay, a full backup will create a copy of the whole database from the beginning to the end. Of course, it is going to be time consuming because it is taking the full database backup, is creating a copy of it, is going to take a lot of time. Remember that thing. Okay, the full backup includes all the changes and the log file entries to the point of backup completion. Okay, you can take the backup on the disk or a tape drive, whichever you prefer. Usually people take it on a tape drive, but nowadays there are many other type of hard disk available. RAID 0, RAID 1. You can actually choose those disks also to actually take a backup, or you can use another hard drive to take a backup, whatever you feel like. SQL Server database required transaction log backup also. Okay, transaction log will keep the track of the transaction that are committed as well as that are not committed. Transaction log backup the information log activity that occurred since the full backup or the transaction log backup. You can take a transaction log backup as frequently as possible depending upon how much activity is going on your database. You can take it every half an hour, you can take it every 15 minutes, or you can take it every 2 hours depending upon your activity on your database. There is no standard timing in taking a transaction log backup. Okay, transaction log backup can be taken only on when the recovery model of the database is full or bulk logged. In a simple model, the transaction log backup automatically is truncated, so you cannot take the transaction log backup. Okay, then there is a bulk log recovery mode. This recovery model actually allows you to perform full differential and transaction log backup. However, the minimum logging of the transaction for the bulk log operation. What does it mean is that it will only log minimum for the bulk log operation, like select into, create indexing, and all those things. Because it takes log minimum, it does minimum logging, so it takes lesser space. Okay, you can recover the transaction up to the lost transaction log, but you cannot recover up to the lost transaction point or the marked transaction as you can do in the full recovery model. The full recovery model logs all the transaction activity as well as the bulk log operations are included in it. In this model, all the restore options are available, including the transaction log backup, the differential backup, and the full database backup. The full recovery model allows you a point in time recovery, which is useful for restoring the database prior to the point of the state of your database failure. And transaction marking allows you to recover the first instance of the marked transaction. Now that I have given you a brief introduction to the backup, now let's go and actually see really what the backups can do. Okay, here is an example here. Okay, what it says, use master go. All recovery model supports full and differential backup. Concurrency, most operations are possible during backup, such as insert, delete, and update. That is what does it mean by when you are taking a backup, the other operations can go on. However, there are certain operations that cannot be performed while you are actually taking a database or a transaction log backup. Okay, so that are such as file management operations such as alter database, add file and remove file. You cannot use a shrink database or shrink file option when the backup is going on. If the backup operation overlaps the file management operation or the shrink operation, then the conflict will arise. Okay, here is a very simple first backup script that says backup database pubs. Okay, and says to the disk e colon slash backup pubs data dot back. Okay, this is the file name that would be named to the backup. This is the folder name. This is the drive, and this is the syntax. Okay, let's execute this syntax. Let's say use master go, and we will execute this statement. Okay, the other statements are commented, so no problem. There we are. It has got executed the statement and the backup has been created. Okay, now we have created the backup for the database pubs. Let's see what backup other options are there. Okay, you can have other options like naming and describing your backup media with the options. There are 4 arguments. Description, what does that backup mean to you? Media description, describe the media set. Media name, name of the entire media backup set, and name, the name of the backup set. And here is one example that uses this syntax. Okay, let's run this backup. It says backup database Northwind to the disk e colon, similar syntax as previous. Now from here with the description, because Northwind back development database name, this is Northwind. Okay, and then there is the December is the DEC, stands for December. 13th is the date, 2011 is the year, and backup and media description, backup over for the second week of the December, media name, and that's it. And we will now execute the statement. There we are. It has been backed up. Remember that the backup folder exists on my hard disk, the drive E. If you want to back up to the another folder, you better create that folder before actually executing the backup. Now suppose if you wanted to retain your backup for the period of 90 days or 3 months, whichever you like to think. So how do you do it? You add a word option, retain days equals to number of days, whatever you want. If you want for the 30 days, you can say 30. If you want for 60 days, you can say 60. If you say 90 days. Here again the rest is the same, only the retain days has changed here. We will execute it again. There we are. The database has been backed up. Now it has a retain days of 90. What does that mean? What does that mean is that when you take a try to overwrite, it will prevent you from overwriting the database until and unless 90 days have not gone by. Now let's go there. There is another option about the init and no init clause with the backup. Init overrides the existing database set but preserves the media header. Backup sets are not overwritten if they have not expired. Backup are not overwritten when the name does not match. This is for init. No init is the default option. It appends the backup and does not override the backup. Now let's run this syntax. It says with init. Init means actually any backup existing prior to it will be erased. However, when I executed this statement, the database was terminated abnormally, because the reason is the database hasn't expired. The previous database that has been backed up, okay, hasn't expired yet, and it gives a message that because it has not expired, your database backup has been terminated abnormally. Let's try one more syntax. Let's try again something else. Let's try to back up this thing. Who retain days 90. Let's see what happens. Again the same type of error. again the backup is terminated abnormally because it is not expired and cannot be overwritten. Though I had specified both in it, still it did not actually overwrite that database. Okay, I have specified both in it, still it did not overwrite the database, as the database has been written for 90 days. Now let's go and use the no init option with the skip. Okay, using the no init option will actually append the database to the backup media or whatever that is, and the written days again will actually keep it for 90 days as it is. Let's run this syntax. There we are, the database has been backed up. Now let's go to the step backup. What is step backup? Backup using multiple device. You can back up the same database to the multiple device. That your database would get divided into different parts depending upon the number of multiple devices you choose. You can use up to 64 different devices for the backup. Used for a very large database. This is option used for very large database, is not used for a normal database. The below database in the example will actually back up on two different media. The backup could be divided in two parts. The backup would be divided in two parts because we are actually backing up on two different media. One part on the first media, the second part on the second media. You will get error if you try to back up the same database on the single device or the media you originally created a backup on two devices. Both will be needed. What does that mean is that in the case if you actually try to back up the database now again on a single device, the same database, it will give you an error because it needs both the devices. The only way to back up on a single device is with the format option. What does the format do? Format will arrange that media only. Now let's run this option. This database backup, execute. The database backup has been executed successfully, and we have created a stepped backup. You can go up to 64 devices, different devices, depending upon your number of devices you have and how big your database is. I will continue in the part 2 of the backup. There are many more options. We will end it here for this thing and we'll continue in part 2 of the backup database.